G'day and welcome to Aussie Moto and Outdoors. Today we're doing a list, 5 tips or 5 beginner mistakes and how to avoid them. Stay tuned, roll the intro.
Aussie Moto and Outdoors.
Alright, like just about every other moto vlogger who starts up a YouTube channel, I'm doing some lists, and this one's going to be 5 beginner mistakes and how to avoid them. Now, I have a somewhat unique perspective on this because I've been a cop for the last 10 years, so I've seen a lot of things that a lot of other road users haven't seen. So let's get straight into it. These are my tips or beginner mistakes and how to avoid them. Number 1, dropping your bike at home. Now, there's a lot of times when you need to move your bike when you first bring it home, to find the perfect spot in the garage, getting it in position for the perfect photo, taking it out to clean it, maintain it, or add some mods. Statistically, however, this is a time when beginners are most likely to drop their bikes, and the main reason for that being you're not at one with balancing it whilst moving it under human power instead of motor power. Even a light bike can still be very heavy when it's stationary and tips past the point of no return. Fortunately, there is a very easy way to avoid almost every drop in this regard, and it's simple as just sitting on the bike. With a leg either side and your own weight balanced evenly over the top, there's less chance of the bike leaning to a point where you're going to need gym-busting arms and legs to keep it from tumbling. So straddle it, one leg either side, sitting on the bike, comfortable, looks cool, and it's safer for the bike. Number 2. Putting your feet down in traffic. Now, we've all been there. The traffic's moving slowly. We're in third gear, then second, and finally first. And now we're riding and feathering the clutch and the rear brake, wondering if the traffic's going to stop altogether. Our left leg starts to hover. The slower we go, the harder it is to balance. We all know once we're committed to putting a foot down, then we pretty much have to do so. We don't yet have the balance or experience to simply put the foot back on the peg. The clutch is in, the bike has a wee wobble, our foot is off the peg and heading to the ground. We are committed to the stop, and that's all there is to it. The foot goes down. But now the traffic starts to move again, just as we're about to stop. We want to keep the flow of traffic. We especially don't want the car behind us to run into us, but we're committed to the stop. What do? Look, for the sake of half a second's discomfort, stop panicking, allay your traffic anxiety, and comfortably and purposefully just put your foot down. Effect the stop. Check your mirrors and get moving again. Contrary to your self-conscious stop, almost no one is actually bothered by your hesitation, and most drivers can easily see that motorcyclists have to put their feet down sometimes in slow-moving traffic, which means they're momentarily going to stop. No big deal. Next time you're in a car watching a motorcyclist in traffic, check and see how different riders handle stop-start traffic and learn a bit from each of them. Most importantly, stop stressing. If you have to put your foot down, just do it. It's better to hold up cars behind you for a second than it is to drop your bike in traffic. As you gather more experience, you're going to get much more comfortable with this sort of thing, and you're not even going to think about it anymore. Number 3. Be courteous. Be safe. It's neither secret nor surprise that motorcyclists carry a far greater risk than car drivers. And not just greater risk of being involved in an accident, but much greater risk of being seriously injured. It's also not surprising that motorcyclists are vigilant on the road for potential hazards and have a healthy respect and awareness for all other road users. Talking about this at length, however, and making a tip or a piece of advice is kicking the proverbial dead horse, as it's been covered in every other tips for beginners video out there. So although it's important, I don't think it's new, golden or untouched territory regards imparting knowledge. Now, what isn't often talked about, but still along those lines, is courteousness and being responsible. You don't just automatically get respect from other road users, and flogging your new 300cc bike to redline through town in every gear, leaning deeply into corners between the lights, doing wheelies at every junction and swerving and weaving between cars is not going to get you much admiration and respect from other road users. More than likely it'll do the opposite. There's a time and place for having fun, and I'm sure I don't need to explain it. Use some common sense. Be polite, even if somebody else isn't, and even if they've made a mistake. I had a guy last week pull out in front of me. When he did finally see me, the look on his face told me he hadn't pulled out on purpose. He just hadn't seen me. He gave me a wave as if to say, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." And I gave him one back as if to say, "Hey, that's okay. I appreciate you owning your mistake. No harm, no foul. Just be careful." Always be nice to other road users, and don't try to be Mick Doohan in your first year. The road is a bad place for it. You really don't yet have the skills anyway, and it's a surefire way to simply piss off everybody around you. You're not impressing many people doing 100 kilometers an hour through town. In fact, most people will think you're a twat. Ride according to your skill level. Ride according to the road conditions. be polite, be courteous, and you're going to get respect. Number 4, giving up your right of way. Now this goes hand in hand with the previous point. You're going to come across situations where you have the right of way and you can see a car sneaking and creeping in, about to cut you off. When you're in your car, it's easy to assume that the other driver has seen you and is deliberately being cheeky, and you can use your vehicle to physically force the fact that you have right of way. On a motorcycle, however, in the same situation, it is entirely possible and probably likely that the other road user has simply not seen you, and if you force your right of way, you're going to be in a situation where you're putting your 200 kilogram motorcycle physically up against a 2-ton ute. You are going to come off second best every time, and the 2-ton ute may not even notice he's taken you right away, even after having hit you, and may drive off none the wiser. Now, like I said earlier, I've been a cop for 10 years, I've seen it all. It's not fair, but as a motorcyclist, you're sometimes going to have to swallow your pride and concede your right of way to an ignorant or selfish driver. Just let it go. Number 5, the statistics. Plenty of people read plenty of statistics, and if you own a motorcycle, you know what it's like when friends, family, or even complete strangers take great pleasure in quoting some death stats at you as soon as they find out you have a motorcycle. Now, the stats don't lie, we are at a higher risk, but there's ways you can mitigate these risks and reduce these percentages. Now, you can take your own research as far as you like regards what these relevant percentages are in your given town, state, or country, but I'm just going to give you a point of perspective on them. Firstly, a percentage of motorcycle accidents involve alcohol. So if you simply never drink and drive, then you can remove that percentage altogether, which ever so slightly reduces the gap between motorcycle and car accidents. Secondly, a decent percentage of motorcycle accidents involve high speed. Okay, so don't speed and you've completely removed yourself from that category as well. Thirdly, a percentage of motorcycle accidents occur due to faulty motorcycles. So to remove yourself from being a stat in this regard, you keep your bike in tip-top shape. Fourth, your gear will reduce your risk of serious injuries if you do have a crash, which means you're removing yourself from several other bike stat categories just by wearing all the gear all the time. Now, we're never going to eliminate all of the risks, and some of you will want to ride fast or without a jacket, and that's your choice. But the more categories we can deliberately and actively remove ourselves from, the smaller that gap between car and bike fatalities becomes. In my many years of policing, I went to hundreds of car crashes and barely a handful of motorcycle accidents. So although they're potentially much worse accidents, they're also much rarer. So that wraps up my 5 tips or 5 beginner mistakes and how to avoid them. Thank you for joining me, it's very much appreciated. Now we've got some really cool adventures planned for the new year. We've got some overnight camp trips, we've got some long range camp trips, mostly from the bikes, but we've got some boat and some kayak trips locked in as well. So do the whole like and subscribe and comment and all those cool things, but more importantly, put your phone down and get outside.